Tonight's big stories. The Marcos administration is finalizing its complaint against Beijing over environmental damage in the disputed waters. While fishermen in Zambales say they will defy China's fishing ban in Masinloc.
Senators remain deeply divided on the proposal to legalize divorce even after the bill was passed by the House of Representatives.
And the Justice Department completes the first draft of the legal brief for President Marcos, outlining all his options for when the ICC or International Criminal Court comes calling.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
Fishermen in Zambales are preparing to conduct collective fishing activities off the coast as a show of resistance against China's 4-month fishing ban, which, if you'll remember, covers Bajo de Masinloc.
Yesterday, President Marcos called this fishing ban and China's threat to arrest supposed trespassers in the disputed waters an escalation. Beijing maintains, though, it is the Philippines, not China, that is escalating the situation.
And amid all these tensions, the Justice Department has confirmed that the OSG, or Office of the Solicitor General, is now finalizing their case against China over environmental damage in the West Philippine Sea. Kyla Makantan with the big story tonight.
The Justice Department says the Office of the Solicitor General is now actively collecting evidence to support a case that they are building against China over environmental damages in the West Philippine Sea.
Pinapag-usapan din po natin yung venue or forum kung saan natin ifa-filing complaint. Siguro po that would be a question better addressed kay SolGen dahil the ball is in their court now. Sila po yung actively na naghahanap po ng iba pang attachments and evidence.
The DOJ says the case could be completed in a few weeks.
We have to be able to strengthen our position, our stance, in such a way that it will hold the scrutiny of whatever international tribunal we decide to go through.
Philippine authorities have earlier said that they have incontrovertible proof that China is behind damages to the marine environment and the harvesting of clams and other species in waters within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. However, this is not the only thing that the Philippines is protesting. Defense officials have also condemned China's fishing ban and its latest policy to arrest supposed trespassers in the disputed waters. President Marcos himself called China's moves worrisome and an escalation of the situation in the West Philippine Sea. However, China maintained that their policies are, quote, consistent with universal practices. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning added that individuals and entities have no need for concern as long as they have not done anything illicit. Mao also accused the Philippines of being the one escalating tensions and making repeated provocations in the South China Sea. President Marcos has noted that the Philippines remains open to backdoor talks with China to resolve tensions. But to this, China replied that although their door of dialogue with the Philippines is also open, dialogue requires sincerity. Beijing says the Philippines should not talk about the need for dialogue while continuing to make provocations. China's threats, though, are not stopping fishers from Zambales from organizing a series of collective fishing activities off the town of Masinloc. They say this is a show of resistance against China's 4-month fishing ban and a call for a complete demilitarization of the West Philippine Sea. Still in the disputed waters, the Justice Department says they continue to gather evidence and testimonies to declare as persona non grata the Chinese military attaché who wiretapped his conversation with an AFP official. This is in connection with China's claim that the Philippines agreed to a new model agreement to reduce tensions at the Yungan Shoal.
Wala pa naman pong significant developments on that. Diplomats are covered. However, we are looking into that. We are seeing kung meron po tayong pwedeng gawin. At the very least po, we can declare those involved individuals as persona non grata here in the Philippines at yung home country nila are restrained or are forced to replace him here in the Philippines.
The DFA says they are also studying other ways to hold the Chinese diplomat and other Chinese embassy officials accountable for wiretapping. Mobile journalist Kyla Makantan, We are One News.
Well, tensions in the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea are exactly what President Marcos is expected to tackle in his keynote speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the first Filipino leader to address the summit. He's actually there now, having arrived at 4:52 p.m. yesterday, May 29. The president was met at the tarmac by Singaporean Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan and his wife. The Shangri-La Dialogue is organized by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, or IISS, and is known as Asia's top defense summit. It kicks off Friday evening and will also see special addresses being delivered by Indonesian President-elect Prabowo Subianto and U.S. Defense Minister Lloyd Austin. Marcos says he will articulate the Philippines' position on defense and diplomacy and its commitment to a rules-based order and constructive multilateralism. This marks the president's fourth trip to Singapore since he assumed office. I should assume fourth trip, counting the unannounced one when he went to catch the F1.
I was there.
Your memory is so long. That's so last year.
Well, he's only been in position since 2022, so it hasn't been that long.
That's true.
Iba na
Okay.
yung Prime
To be
Minister
fair.
ngayon, so it's a different welcome.
That is true.
Well, talking about the West Philippine Sea, one person who knows a thing or two about that is former Solicitor General Philippine Hilbay, who led the legal team that argued the Philippines' challenge to China at the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague. And he joins us now via Zoom to help us hash out some of these issues. Magandang gabi, attorney.
Hi, good evening, Gretchen, Shawn, and Regina.
Okay, Attorney Florian, you've been calling for one point person for the West Philippine Sea. While I understand that there have been several people at the forefront of this, why is there a need for just one person, and what exactly would be the role?
Right, okay. Ultimately, of course, the point person for the West Philippine Sea is the President of the Republic, President Marcos, because he is the chief executive and the chief architect of our foreign policy. But we need to recognize that the president is a very busy person. He cannot devote full time to the West Philippine Sea issues, even if this might even define his presidency. If you look at the structure of every government, and I'm not just talking about the structure of the current president's administration, the reality is that every cabinet official is very busy looking out for their own turf or territory. And so the task of looking at the West Philippine Sea issues from a more dedicated perspective, full-time, and having the power to coordinate with everyone and making effective recommendations to the president is really a task that nobody wants. If you look at, for example, during the time of President Aquino, it wasn't up until the case was filed that a formal agent was appointed. So that was the Solicitor General. So the Solicitor General is also a very busy person. And so you wouldn't expect him to dedicate all of his time. So whether it's the Executive Secretary, the Secretary of Justice, the Secretary of Defense, or the Solicitor General, regardless of how brilliant and competent they are, the reality is, given the magnitude of the West Philippine Sea issue, you really need to have a confidant or a consigliere or a point person who can dedicate his time and effort coordinating a whole-of-nation approach over the West Philippine Sea and making effective recommendations for the president.
Okay, but what kind of person should this be? You mentioned not the cabinet secretary. And who would pick this person? Should it be someone from the academe, someone with military background? What sort of ideal person do you think the president should consider for this post?
Well, ultimately, it has to be a person that the president himself can trust, because you're not looking for middle-level functionary. In every government agency, you'll have a middle-level functionary who has some knowledge about the West Philippine Sea. In every university, you'll have that kind of person. But the person I imagine is someone who will be personally known to the president, or at least will be trusted by the president, and who will be able to make effective decisions, meaning at the highest level. Dahil if you look at, for example, what's happening today, everybody is an expert on West Philippine Sea issues, and anyone can speak to the press, anyone can write articles and make press statements. But it's easiest to make pronouncements when you don't have any skin in the game. Everyone who has an opinion on the West Philippine Sea will make those statements. But the reality is, it's only the president who can make effective recommendations or actions. And he needs someone who is dedicated full-time to make those personal recommendations. During the time of President Aquino, of course, once the case is filed, the person who signs the pleadings for the Republic is the Solicitor General. Siya yung nakataya. And, the truth is, nobody wants to sign something that could be fatal to their career or could be damaging to the Republic. So being a confidant of the president on such a very important matter is what I consider a high risk, low reward. Dahil, for example, in the case of whether it's the Executive Secretary or the Solicitor General or the SOJ, kung manalo, everybody will claim some part of the victory. Kung matalo, siya lang talaga yung sisisihin. That's why nobody really wants to be the person who recommends to the president a particular action. Kaya naman, in almost all administrations, they simply create committees. Dahil it's a committee. In the case of a committee, you have a group of equals who are basically pushing papers, dahil no one wants to be responsible for anything.
Right. Reading between the lines, do I take it to mean you think the current approach is ineffective, that there are too many voices in the mix? I mean, there has been quite a bit of tit for tat lately, both officially through DFA missives on both sides, Philippines and China, as well as online via X.
Right. No, and this is not unique to the current administration. This is the case, in fact, with every Philippine administration. What we need, I think, is to be able to match the discipline and organizational structure of the other side, China. If you look at what China has done, one particular line, even if they're totally wrong on the law, even if they're totally wrong on the facts, they will keep on uttering the same line. Whereas the Philippines, you have various voices even within the administration uttering so many different statements. And so there's no communications discipline on the part of the Philippine government. And again, let me just try to emphasize that it's not unique to the current administration. That's always been the case with respect to the Philippines, precisely because there's no point person who can take over and at least coordinate. Maybe something similar to the recommendation of Senate President Chis Escudero to have a singular spokesperson, but something with an obligation that is even larger than that, which is not only to speak, but to coordinate the entire efforts of the nation.
We've debated that on this very set, and Shawn was the one who pointed out that that's because China, the Philippines is a democracy, whereas China is not. So that's the big difference, right?
I actually anticipated that. But you see, we're one government, singular administration. And so you can have various unofficial statements coming from, say, the academe or experts, self-appointed or not. But when it comes to official action and language of the government, you need to have, that kind of discipline that can match the discipline of China, because otherwise, you'll be confronted with a very messy language or set of ideas from the Philippines, whereas on the other hand, you have a very unified, and disciplined organizational communication structure on the part of China. And our advantage really is that we're on the right side of things here. We have the law on our side. We have already secured the title over the West Philippine Sea. And that's stage one, which is actually the most important part of this intergenerational struggle, if I can call it that. But we need to do this step by step, meaning we're now in the second step where we might need to file a second case against China to enforce portions of our title. And again, now more than ever, you need an organizational structure that can
Right. Attorney-
respond to the
Sorry,
discipline of China.
Right. Attorney, if I may just interject, because while we were discussing that particular point that Regina brought up, we were also discussing the fact that, and I think our boss brought this up, he said, hindi ba may ganyan na? EO 57 creating the National Maritime Council, replacing it from the National Coast Watch Council, to be chaired by ES Bersamin. Isn't that sort of kind of the same thing? Have you gone over that EO, and could this point person be part of the new NMC that was created by that Executive Order 57?
Right. I mentioned that earlier, which is the problem of referring the problems to a committee of equals, right? If you have a committee of equals, which is similar to the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, now renamed National Maritime Council, then it's simply going to be a committee that pushes a lot of papers and throws a lot of ideas. But what I'm actually thinking of is a person beside the president who will work full-time and focus on everything West Philippine Sea. So if you have, for example, a National Maritime Council composed of various secretaries of the various departments of government, no one will want to take charge because, number one, they're equals. And number two, no one will want to take charge because nobody wants to take on the added responsibility of being responsible for the actions of government. The reality, again, is that regardless of the administration, it has to be the president who has to be the ultimate decision maker. And before the president makes that ultimate decision, whether to file or not to file or say something very important, he needs someone that he can really trust who has already collated all relevant information from various sources, coordinated the messaging for the entire nation, and developed a whole-of-nation approach or a strategy for dealing with this particular matter.
Attorney-
It can't be a committee of equals.
Attorney, I'm just curious to know what you think about the transparency offensive that the government is taking now, since you're talking about having one single unified voice for the Philippine stance, but the Philippine Coast Guard, for one, is taking a different direction on this. They're bringing more journalists on board, more voices heard to tell the story. You mean to say you don't agree with that?
That can become part of the whole of nation strategy of this point person of the president, right? And so even as the Coast Guard, is adopting this transparency approach, that might in fact be the communication strategy of the point person of the president. And so it can be consistent with whatever policy is ultimately adopted by the president with this point person. But we need to emphasize that it has to be consistent with an idea that comes from the top, that is coordinated down the middle and down to the bottom, so that we can again match the discipline of the other side. If you have, for example, the Coast Guard adopting a particular policy, and then the SOJ adopting a different policy, and then the Senate adopting a different policy, then that's not going to be a very good look on the nation. I think that can really be addressed by having a coordinator that can work with all government agencies, who will have the authority and the gravitas to make effective recommendations because he is personally appointed by the president. The president really cannot take on the West Philippine Sea challenge on his own because he practically faces all the problems of the nation. And the West Philippine Sea, no matter how grave it is just one of those problems.
All right. Attorney, actually, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I pick your brain because you were the OSG at that time, and the current Office of the Solicitor General is finalizing their cases versus China. These are, I believe, environmental cases. Do you think we have enough grounds for this to take off? Because the SolGen before you, Justice Hardaleza, we spoke to him last week, and he is of the opinion, I quote, "We should have filed these cases yesterday." That's what he said.
There's the pressure, basically pushing for us to put a dollar amount to the environmental damage that China has
Right.
allegedly caused in the South China Sea. So what do you think? Does it have legs?
Well, in terms of the merits of the case, I think, whether you're a Filipino or not, if you're objective enough about it, it's quite apparent and clear and evident that the Philippines has a very strong case, especially coming from the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal, which already essentially outlines what we can do insofar as enforcing our claim. And the case that might be filed or soon to be filed by the government simply is consistent with that. The problem, however, or the devil is in the details, where to file, the timing of the filing, who's going to be in charge of the case, what will be the details of the arguments, are we going to ask for damages, are we going to add some other claims to the existing claims? That is something that you'll have to look at more in detail, because again, the big picture is that we have a very strong case given the facts of what China has been doing. It's basically it's basically gone rogue. It's still a member of the UNCLOS system, and yet it has continued to disrespect the entire UNCLOS system by disregarding the case that we won. But that's an entirely different matter when you start talking about the particular timing of the filing of the case, the details of the case, where you're going to file, who's going to be in charge, and what are the costs of this arbitration, and how you're going to streamline the communications for this particular case, and who's going to be in charge, meaning sino yung tataya. Again, let me go back to my experience. When I became Solicitor General, I actually wrote a formal memo to the President asking that I not be appointed the agent, because I knew how difficult the case was. And, there's so many egos that you have to deal with. And the case was really quite noisy and too controversial. And again, the Solicitor General, like any other cabinet official, is very busy. But of course, you cannot say no to the president. If the president orders you to do something, you have to be a good soldier and pray to God that you are able to deliver, right? And thankfully, the nation was able to deliver. And so those are the fine details for the next case that might be filed by the government. Sino yung pipirma, sino yung tataya,
Attorney,
who will be responsible.
Speaking of cases, can we file a case, for example, because China's declared a 4-month fishing ban, and this new Coast Guard law that threatens to detain trespassers? If they do detain a Filipino for trespassing with that fishing ban, is that a ground to file another case again?
Yeah, in fact, the fishing ban is not new. When China took over Scarborough Shoal in 2012, a month later, they declared a fishing ban. And then they suspended it several months later, and every now and then they would declare a fishing ban. So this is not really new. I think this is simply part of China's game of making life more difficult for the Filipinos regarding, or every time that the Philippines starts getting aggressive. If you look at the timeline of the actions of the various presidents, for example, during the time of GMA, she was more cooperative, and then President Aquino, more assertive, and then Duterte, more cooperative, and now President Marcos, more assertive. And so China, I think, plays to that kind of a policy. It simply reacts to what the Philippine president is doing. Of course, if China decides to effectively enforce the ban and starts arresting Filipino fisherfolk, then it gets to escalate the case, which provides us more grounds to file cases against
So,
China.
before we end this interview, tatanong namin kung meron ka bang suggestion. Di ba?
Just-
Dun sa
Yeah,
point
but-
person na
Yes, one
binabanggit
name lang,
ninyo.
SolGen.
Okay. In fact, I should not make any suggestion because that destroys the credibility of the proposal.
That's true.
It's better for the president to make
Okay.
the decision himself, and ultimately, it has to be someone that he feels that he can trust.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough.
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight, former Solicitor General Philippine Hilbay.
We're going to take a quick break. Right after that, the Justice Department has completed the first draft of its briefer on the ICC for President Marcos. The details when the big story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
It is quite a divided Senate of late. That's an understatement. But one other issue that has got senators on different sides of the aisle is the bill to legalize divorce in the Philippines. Those who oppose the proposal are now suggesting making annulment easier and cheaper instead of passing the divorce bill. Ria Fernandez-Ubina with the details.
While the divorce bill may have already passed in the House of Representatives, over in the Senate, its approval seems to be hanging by a thread. Senate President Cheese Escudero has made it clear that he is opposed to the proposal. He prefers to simplify the annulment process rather than pass the divorce bill. Furthermore, Escudero says the version of the bill passed by the House did not make the process any more affordable.
Pinalawak ang grounds pero hindi naman binigyang daan na hawakan ng PAW ang mga kaso tulad nito. So makikinabang na naman dito kung sakasakali ay yung mayayaman na kaya magbayad ng abogado. Mas madali na para sa kanila. Paano yung mahihirap nating kababayan?
This was also the sentiment shared by Senators Jinggoy Estrada and Joel Villanueva. They believe that there are other legal options available for married couples to separate.
Kung yung Diyos mo sinasabi na I hate divorce, baka magkaroon ng drive-thru lahat ng kanto dito sa Pilipinas. At pag ang mag-asawa ay nag-aaway, ayaw lang ng bangs, ayaw lang ng shampoo, ayaw lang ng niluto ni Mrs. mag-aaway at maghihiwalay. Baka hindi po tayo ready doon.
Mabilisin na lang yung mga annulment cases. No? Kasi medyo, let's face it, medyo matagal at medyo may kamahalan kung magpapalit ng annulment.
Estrada has reportedly persuaded other senators to reconsider their positions on divorce as well. He reportedly approached 4 senators who are also opposed to it, including Senate President Escudero, Senate Majority Leader Francis Tolentino, Villanueva, and Bato de la Rosa. On the other hand, 5 senators are in favor, including Senators Robin Padilla, Grace Poe, Risa Ontiveros, Amy Marcos, and Pia Cayetano. Currently, the divorce bill is in the Committee on Rules in the Senate and has not yet been debated in plenary. Both versions from the House of Representatives and the Senate provide for absolute divorce. However, there is one difference. In the Senate, homosexuality is not considered a ground for divorce. Under the Family Code, there are only 2 ways for married couples who wish to separate. The first is legal separation, where the spouses are allowed but not obliged to live under one roof, even though their marriage remains valid. The second is annulment, where the marriage can be declared void or invalid. This means that if the divorce bill also passes in the Senate and is signed into law by the President, it will become the third option for married couples. In a statement, Congressman Edsel Lagman, the author of the divorce bill in the House of Representatives, seemed to indirectly criticize senators who opposed the bill. He emphasized that lawmakers should pass laws not to please the church, but to help spouses and children trapped in abusive relationships. Other senators are reportedly open to studying the divorce bill further. Senator Risa Ontiveros, who is one of the authors of the divorce bill in the Senate, is also willing to listen and engage in discussions regarding the matter. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Official documents made public by Senator Risa Hontiveros revealed more links between Bamban Mayor Alice Guo and a certain Wen Yi Lin, whom she has lived with and who many are now speculating is her biological mother. News 5 went to check on their declared residence, and here is Rainiel Pawid with that report.
Minority Senator Risa Hontiveros has gotten hold of more documents linking Banban Mayor Alice Guo to a certain Wen Yi Lin, who by now is being speculated as Guo's biological mother. Wen Yi Lin's name came up in several documents from the Securities and Exchange Commission, wherein she is identified as incorporator along with Mayor Guo, her siblings, and her father. They also shared a similar address in Valenzuela City. The same goes for other businesses of the Guo family. They also declared another shared address, this time in Bulacan. However, when we went to check the Guo family's declared residence in Valenzuela City, the property apparently belonged to someone else.
Ikaklaro ko lang po, yung 58 na pinupuntahan nyo is not the original 58, number 58. So, naka 3 times na kaming palit ng number. Siyempre, natakot kami, baka mamaya maraming nga pumunta, like what happened now, nandito kayo. So, sana out of na.
We also went to check another one of Wen Yi Lin's declared address in Dauma, Balacat City in Pampanga. There's only around 500 houses in the neighborhood, but this is what we got.
Sir, hindi pa po namin nahanap, sir.
Sige, sir. Tanong-tanong pa kayo.
Copy, sir, copy. Ngayon, kasalukuyan, inahanap namin sa mga apartment kung saan siya pwede mangupahan.
Hindi po namin kilala yun. Wala po nakatirang ganito dito. Wala rin mga Chinese rin na dito. Konti lang.
Pero itsura po na yun, yung nasa litrato.
Wala man dito yun.
Amid all this search for more details on Mayor Guo, her camp insists that her mother is Filipina and it is not Wen Yi Lin.
Pilipina yung nanay niya. Nung tinanong ko siya, hindi rin niya ma-comment kung sino niya. Pero definitely hindi niya nanay yan.
Senator Hontiveros said the executive session on Mayor Alice Guo will be on June 5th. They will be inviting representatives from executive agencies and intelligence units as resource speakers. Meanwhile, the camp of Mayor Alice said her father is also willing to face the Senate if summoned. For 1PH, this is Rainiel Pawid, News 5.
The Justice Department confirmed that they have finished the first draft of their briefer for President Marcos on the ICC. This briefer outlines all the president's legal options in case the International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants against former President Duterte and others. Justice Assistant Secretary Mico Clavano says Secretary Crispin Remulla and his undersecretaries are still assessing the draft to make sure they didn't leave anything out. He also said before that the briefer will contain legal implications for the Philippines, whether it stays out of or returns as a member of the ICC.
Meron na po tayong first draft ng legal brief which will be vetted by the undersecretaries and the secretary himself para po wala tayong makakalimutan, wala po tayong anggulo na hindi titignan. And then after that, once everything is finalized, we will forward the same to the Office of the President para po mabasa ni Presidente.
After this next quick break, we will be speaking with former Philippine Daily Inquirer Business News Editor Dax Lucas about his recently launched business news site that quote-unquote opens the door to the 1% mindset. Don't go away.
Welcome back. You're still watching a big story here on One News.
So yesterday we had a big discussion about 2024 being the year artificial intelligence at work becomes mainstream, right? And tonight we have someone who's actually a living example of that. I'm talking about Dax Lucas, the former business news editor of the Philippine Daily Inquirer, who recently launched a new platform for business news that's assisted by AI and who is live with us in the studio tonight. Dax, welcome to the show. Thanks
Good evening,
for joining
ladies.
us.
This is a role reversal.
Thanks for not sending your AI to come tonight.
100% human, right?
Hey, you're right. You're right. This is a role reversal. What's it like being in the hot seat?
It is.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Insider PH is what your site is called. So
That's
it's
right.
insiderph.com.
Correct.
And your tagline is, it opens the door to the 1% mindset.
Yeah.
Talk us through that and what gap you think you're trying to fill in the industry.
Well, in my 25 years as a business journalist, I've seen a lot of gaps, as you would put it, in the work that my colleagues do. to the point that I believe that we have been failing the public to a large degree. I mean, I personally feel that way. I've done a lot of stories on scams, a lot of exposés every year, yet year after year, we see thousands, hundreds of thousands of people falling into these scams, you know? So if that's happening, it tells me that I'm either not doing my job well enough or I'm doing it the wrong way. That's what we're trying to address with Insider PH.
What can you do now that you couldn't before?
Well, it's a clean slate. So all the shortcomings in all my previous roles, in all my previous jobs, can be addressed through this clean slate, hopefully, for example. I mean, the most basic thing is finding the right story to inform you. And I've had people asking me how can they find the story on topic X, topic Y, and it's almost impossible to navigate. With our new platform, that's the number one task the developers had. Make it very easy to find the stories you want. So if you go through the site, left column, right column, under the story, it's all there. It's impossible to miss a single story. It's very fast.
Okay. Dax, well, I knew, of course, you did resign from the Inquirer after a big career, and we would always look out for your blind items, yung mga pasabog mo sa business world, sometimes crossing over to non-business world but related to big people. Right. Are we going to see these same things in Insider PH?
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. It's a progressive rollout, so we will have all of those, and eventually things beyond that, right? So if this were an athletic competition, the platform is 2 weeks old as of today. So we are stretching our muscles. Myself especially, I haven't been a reporter for 2 years. I've been an editor since 2022. So the past couple of weeks and the next few weeks will be a time for us to get back in the groove. And after that, you will see more and more of these stories you're talking about, hopefully. And hopefully gain more traction with the public.
I said in my introduction, it's assisted by AI. Exactly how do you use AI in this setup, and how does it make you more efficient?
It's actually a very simple process innovation. A lot of my colleagues today spend a significant chunks of their productive hours rewriting press releases, transcribing interviews that can consume
a day,
a whole day, hours.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is using enterprise versions of commercially available AI tools to produce in seconds what we used to do in, for almost an hour. Like, for example, I'm a fairly fast writer. For me to rewrite a single press release and make it a nice story, it will take anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. The latest version of the enterprise tool we're using can do it in 6 seconds. So all the time is freed up for qualitative work.
I was going to
right?
say, does this free up your time to write more juicy stories?
That's the idea. That's the idea, right? That's the idea. We'll definitely going that direction.
Okay, so in terms of business, it really is the 1% that you're focused on.
In a manner of speaking, that's the other aspect of the platform. A lot of these 1% guys are unfortunately, I'd say, misunderstood. They get the bad. And before we go further, it's important to clarify my biases. You'll see it on the site. It's clearly laid out, very clearly. Diba?
Saan dun?
You might
on the About Us page, you'll see the AI use policy. You will see our philosophy, our manifesto.
How about sponsors, ganyan?
We will have that. Right now, there's no.
It's
all
very
out of pocket.
What's
Yeah.
interesting to me is your pursuit of independent journalism. I mean, you come from a big publication, Philippine Daily Inquirer, but now you're venturing into your own. what did you see with the business models now that gave you the courage to take this leap?
There's a big unfilled need, right? Especially the aspect of presenting accurately and fairly the view of a business leader, of a capitalist, of the guys who work up here, right? For every one Dax Lucas taking that view, there are 100 or 200 of my colleagues taking the general view, right? So definitely it's a lopsided affair right now.
How do you manage that with the biases?
So the bias, just to spell it out, is leaning towards the capitalism side.
100%.
Okay, so it's more pro-capitalism.
Yeah, you know, if you've read the Financial Times or the Economist, very clear for capitalism, liberal economics, free markets.
The difference is those cater to more developed economies, right?
Right.
So here, of course, we're a developing economy. Therefore, the bias is towards
that's where we want to go, right?
Well, he did clarify or pointed out 1% only. Never mind the 99.
These guys, what I'm trying to say is, these guys aren't bad. The profit motive is not bad, right? Take every major development we have today. Chances are it was driven by the profit motive.
For sure.
Even this thing right here.
But how do you manage your biases? I mean, like, because news is news. You have to get different sides, different sources. How do you manage that?
What I promised the audience is this kind of distribution, 50-50, right? Nowadays, when you have an issue out in the public against, let's say, a big corporation, you scan the news, you will see, if you're familiar with the Pareto principle, 80-20,
Right, 80-20.
you'll see 80% negative attacks. You will see, if you're lucky, 20, maybe 10% of the other guys, the corporation side. Sometimes it says we were unable to reach them. Right? Not here. This one will equalize that.
How do you do that? Just leveraging, of course, on your contacts. We all know that's how journalists really work anyway.
Yeah. A big part of this is the fact that I've had the privilege of being able to interact with these principles over a career of almost 3 decades. So what you will get from us is less of the canned reply, more of the candid reply straight from a phone call or a text message.
Basically, the access. You're giving us access to your access.
That's what the tagline says.
Does
right?
it?
No.
It's sort of.
No,
Yeah,
But you will call them out when needed as well, right? We are counting on you for that.
No single business group in this country has escaped being called out by this guy. I mean, I swear.
Okay.
Look it up.
Right.
So
These
despite
guys,
the bias, you are ready to,
the bias
push
is,
where necessary.
The bias is for a philosophy, not for specific
Certain personalities.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Who is your audience? I mean, forgive me, but I'm not a business beat person. Am I part of your audience?
100%.
I mean,
No,
paano mo, kasi mahilig ka sa chismis.
There you go. There you go.
Paano
It
mo sa 100
depends.
lahat ng
We
tao,
need to see your SALN. We need to see your net worth.
Paano binabalanse yung for using AI, that's one. And also making business news relatable to people like me.
That's the chismis is the easiest thing to do actually. Yun ang pinakamadali. The challenge for us is to be able to explain to non-business people why inflation is important, why GDP growth is important, all these technical things. I believe the 3 decades I've had, over a decade that my colleague Miguel Camus has had and my other colleague Ramon Nocon, all that can be distilled into a language which will
How
be
do you plan to do that? Text, video, or just plain text?
All of them. Of course, it will start with text because that's that's our
That's
native.
your
So are you going to
comfort
grow
zone.
your social media team, like a multimedia reporting? And
Definitely. I mean,
Okay,
you have
Dax,
to.
we are running out of time. Like you said, birthing pains, 2 weeks old. Congratulations. But what can we look
Congratulations.
forward to and when can we look forward to, kumbaga, may mas mga pasabog?
This is, she just wants,
I'm
she just
just
wants
asking.
to tease me.
right?
I'm like, I have
She
my
just
own
wants to
manifesto. I'm
chismis.
chismosa.
Okay.
I think Dax knows this. I'm not
That's her
hiding it.
bias.
Yeah, that's my bias.
That's her.
Chismis.
So the ramp up will be something like this. Like think of it as a 45-degree angle, right? Not like this, not like that. But the output that you're familiar with from myself, from Miguel, from Monchito, you will see that escalate at a 45-degree angle. So give us a few weeks, we'll be right there. Serve your kind of news.
And someone is very happy. We are going to have to leave it there. So it's insiderph.com. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Dax Lucas, former Philippine Daily Inquirer business editor, but now founder and I guess EIC? Founder and CEO of InsiderPH.com.
Wait, do you do EICs? Do you have an editor-in-chief?
Yes,
Is that you
he's
as
the
well?
EIC.
Or is this a more
we will
democratic?
have one
You will have one.
soon.
On that note, that's it for the big story on this Thursday night.
we are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.